It was a jarring motion when I whipped my head back, tumbling over myself as I returned to the real world. The dark realm where Asmodai revealed himself to me and gave me my newfound purpose still fresh in my mind. I was staring up at the ceiling as Amunda came into my peripheral vision. Even as I looked at him, new spells and incantations surged into my mind. Powerful and dark spells of corruption, binding, and particularly evocation. Asmodai wishes for me to summon him into a new vessel, and in doing so, I can finally repay my debt. Bella? Amunda asked, concerned. I narrowed my eyes at him. We're in deep crap, and we need to make up for it. I sat up, trying to get to my feet. Amunda eventually gave me his hand and helped me to stagger upright. We have a prison to go to, but before that, we need supplies. It was time to make good on a little helper I had to enlist, as I was running low on my pets. Amunda and I piled out of the old 90s-era Lincoln Town car he insisted on owning. It was a heap, yet he paid for its restoration. I hate this thing, I noted. The seats are uncomfortable. It's a classic, and they do not make cars like these anymore. Amunda defended his poor taste. I walked towards the airport side emergency exit and saw the small tree still standing where we had left it a few weeks before. I grinned as we approached and stood over the soil of the tree. With the tip of my heel, I brushed off some soil near the base, and there it was, a nose. He was still there, and from the sight of the soil moving under his nostrils, alive. For that much I was thankful, and yet I had no time to deal with any kind of bargaining. This was a business transaction, plain and simple. How are you down there? I taunted. A pair of eyes opened and the tree leaves shook. Have you had time to think about your predicament? I asked. The eyes pleaded with me, begging for help as he blinked twice. I glared at him. I have no time to play games with you. Your literal humanity disgusts me, but you have the chance to be something more than human as a specter, I offered. Bind yourself to me, and I promise an end to your suffering. He blinked twice. Good. I pulled out my bloodletting blade. I'll keep part of your flesh, but otherwise, the soul seeks salvation at my hands alone, and binds itself to my will. If this soul agrees to let a pact be made, I brandished my bloodletting knife. He blinked twice more, and it sealed the deal. I slid the knife under the soil. As I did, blood bubbled up from the ground. He shook for a moment before his eyes went black, and I watched as the spirit of a man, twisted and broken, rose from the soil. Why does it still hurt? He whimpered. I stroked his cheek and pulled him towards me. Stay close, dear. Your suffering will end soon enough. His spirit twisted and lengthened, wrapping around my shoulders like a fur scarf. I stroked his spirit softly as I dug his head from the ground, pulling several roots up with it. As I did this, a few seeds tumbled to the ground with it. I grinned, plucking the seeds from the soil. Perfect. Amunda, get the bag. Amunda did as he was told, shoving what I could cut off the head into the bag. We managed a portion of his arm, which was good. The more of them we had, the better for later. I had big plans for him going forward. We pulled into where I found Andrew Sanders located, an ex-cop found guilty in a police shooting of an unarmed man. What connection this man had to any kind of occult was something we would have to discover. You're certain this is the place? Amunda blanched. I looked up from the parking lot at the sign over the visitor's entrance. Sousa Baranowski, Correctional Center. Yes, I announced. I'm certain. Amunda took 5 small vials out of his pocket and shook them well, before dropping a small bit of Alex's blood into them. And this? I was told to add the blood before we went in, I assured. They will search us, Amunda informed. They won't find anything, I confirmed for him. Amunda handed me the vials. Spirits of the darkness, shadows of the moonless night, invisible legions of the world without light, gather ye now around that all may hear. Gather ye now round that all may see. Gather ye now round that all may be, in accordance as one. hiding this form from the light of day, from the senses of the seekers, so that even whilst they search in earnest, lo shall it not be found. So it may be, let it be. With the spell cast, I watched as spirits coalesced around the vials, concealing each in a glimmer to make them appear benign to whoever looked at them. I slipped them into my purse. You wait here. As I headed into the prison, 2 guards both approached me at the security desk. "Manner of your visit today, madam?" the first man asked. He was a gruff fellow, dark complexion and short hair. He wore a light blue uniform, and the shirt strained against his defined muscles. His eyes roamed my body hungrily. I wore a simple black dress today, and stylish heels, along with my small clutch purse. "I'm here to visit an inmate." "Who's the lucky guy?" a man with a typical Bostonian accent asked from behind me. There are few things more grating to my ears than this mix of Irish and American accents fusing together to form what is possibly the worst sound I've ever heard. A sound I had to get accustomed to. I turned over my shoulder to see a lighter-skinned man with blonde hair and light eyes. He grinned at me. The pit of my stomach turned and I faced forward. Andrew Sanders. The man before me's face turned sour as he looked me up and down. "Family?" I winked. "Not yet." With the guard properly revolted, finally, he looked at my purse. "Please put that into the bin," he said, holding out a small plastic container. I placed my purse into the bin, meriting a small search from the guard. I smiled as he glossed over the 5 vials in my purse. The metal detector didn't go off as I walked through, and my purse passed through a small X-ray machine. I collected my purse and ensured the vials were still inside. "Thanks." I blew the pair of guards a kiss and made my way to a check-in counter. The woman behind the desk was a frumpy middle-aged thing. She looked at me with thick-rimmed glasses. Her makeup was atrocious. Far too much foundation, with lipstick that looked like they applied it with a mop. Her eyeshadow was 4 different shades of awful purples and blues, set behind hideous false fake eyelashes. Her hair was black and permed as if that was something people did to themselves willingly in this decade. She looked me over, her eyes tinting green with envy. "Name?" "BellaDelAvana." I flashed my flawless, well-maintained smile at her. She humphed to herself. "He's in Supermax, so you'll not have any physical contact." "Phooey," I mock-pouted. A few moments of her typing, and she motioned to a hallway to her right. "Down there. The guard will show you into the visiting area." "Thanks, Nona," I called to her as I headed back to where she directed me. I grinned, wondering if she knew enough Italian to pick up on my insult. I hoped she did. As I walked down the hallway, the guards all stopped and stared, even the few female guards. One short, fat female guard spotted me and glared daggers at me as I walked by. To emphasize my not eating from a trough, shoving food into my mouth hand over fist, I slid my hand over the curve of my hips and over my waist, turning my back to her to flaunt my waspish figure. I could feel her glaring at me from behind, and I looked to the guard who stood before the door which said visiting area. His eyes were all over me as he opened the door for me. I walked in without so much as acknowledging my presence. At first I was not entirely sure who I was looking for. There was a row of small cubicles facing one another, each with a phone on one side and a large sheet of glass separating them. The entire room was some tone of beige and tan, colors that screamed government complex. As I scanned the room, I eventually found my mark. A man in an orange jumpsuit led to a set of phones separately by thick glass caught my eye. And the moment my eyes met his, I knew he was the one I was after. As he walked out, I saw the darkness surrounding him, and it was a darkness I was familiar with. It was a burning hatred, even worse than my own. However, as his soul was no longer in his possession, he had sold it to someone, likely Asmodai. I wondered, what did he sell it for, precisely? Strength and power? But how was it worded? I was so very curious. He wasn't a bad-looking fellow either, Green eyes, dark hair, nice skin, and a strong jaw. I sauntered over to him, beaming as I did. His eyes lit up as he saw me, and the guard settled him into the seat next to the phone. I gingerly placed my purse on the small counter before me and picked up the phone. Andrew did the same. "Hello, gorgeous." Ah, that accent. But even so, this was my mark. My soul was literally on the line. "Hello, Andrew." "Andy, please," he clarified. All of my friends call me Andy. "Well, Andy, I've been looking for you." I looked to the left and right, seeing the guards everywhere. I did my best to make the conversation as awkward as possible for others to eavesdrop on. "I want you to put a baby in me." Andy grinned wide. "Do you now?" With a few guards now looking away, I whispered, "My name is Bella. Our mutual," I searched for the best word to use, "benefactor has sent me." Andy's grin only intensified as it did his green eyes. "He said you'd be coming by soon. He never said you were drop-dead gorgeous." I flashed him a smile, leaning over the counter to give him a view down my dress, and to continue the illusion that I was a woman who has an infatuation with him as an inmate. "I have something for you." I produced the 5 vials of the potion I had conjured and hidden. Unsurprisingly, Andy could see them. "Perfect. But how are you getting them in here?" He tapped the glass as if to emphasize the obstacle we faced. I smiled and glanced at my newly acquired spirit, which unwrapped himself from around me. He formed into the figure of a man. Andy looked him over. "Oh, nice. Can anyone else see him?" I shook my head, handing the vials to my new helper. "Give these to the death row inmates, discreetly, then return to Andy to serve him in my stead." Andy grinned. "I'll send that back to you when the time is right." "When will that be?" I said, kissing the glass. Andy placed his hand on the other side of the glass, where my lips had left light marks of lipstick. "Any day now. This place will riot." He grinned wickedly. "And when that happens, you'll want to be here beforehand." "Why's that?" Andy grinned. "Because I'll make sure that when it happens, Father Thomas will be here just for you." I smiled wickedly. Oh my, I was downright giddy. "Don't touch him, understand? He's mine." Andy nodded, then glanced to a guard as my new spirit made off with the vials, lifting them over the large partition and down a corridor. "Guard, I'm done." I pouted. "No, don't go." "You're a tease," Andy shouted, winking as the guard led him away. I turned and walked out quickly, my side of the task at least halfway done. Amunda sat with his hip resting on the town car. "How'd it go?" he asked. "Swimmingly. Now, come on. We have to wait for a signal. Then we'll be back here," I grinned, "and things will get heavy." I heard nothing for days and worried that our plan would not work until finally, action, my little spirit returned to me. I was corrupting a set of rabbits when he returned. I found that feeding the demonic blood we had gained to the rabbits, drawing out corrupted souls from them, brought about a much more powerful helper. When my most powerful soul came to me, I was ecstatic. "It's time," he said before returning to his place around my neck and shoulders. "Amunda, get your heap of a car ready to go," I shouted. "We need to head to the prison." I felt like a child on Christmas morning, at least the few times I recalled ever opening presents, before my father destroyed my life and humanity did the rest. When we arrived, everything appeared calm and average. Amunda walked with me past the gate and with the guards. This time I had cast my concealment spell on my bloodletting knife, but letting it go through the X-ray machine and the metal detector would prove problematic. I had a rather inventive plan to get everything through the metal detector, and it would have worked out swimmingly. I had planned to place the knife on the ground, gently kick it past the detector, while pretending to adjust the strap of my heel, and then pick it up on the other side, all while distracting the guard with a look at my rear. This all fell to bits when I heard a familiar voice shout from down the hallway, "Arrest that man." To be honest, despite everything, I was unconcerned or even frightened by the prospect of being caught. I knew he'd be here, so rather than panic, I merely stepped through the metal detector, smiling wide as it went off. Father Thomas. There he was. The old priest who had set me on this path. Behind him, a rather tall fellow with green eyes, whose face reminded me of someone I had seen before. He wore a beige trench coat, and a policeman's badge dangled from his neck as he ran behind Father Thomas. "That's my line, Father," the police shouted, trailing behind him. God, I hate Boston accents. Her too, Father Thomas said, pointing to me as the guards surrounded Amunda and I. One guard placed his hand on my shoulder, while Amunda got shoved to the ground and handcuffed, protesting loudly. "Do you know who I am?" Amunda shouted. Father Thomas fixed me with a stern glare. "Of all the places to run into you," he smiled. "God truly does have a plan." I frowned to him as the guard cuffed one of my hands. "Father," I turned my scowl into a grin, "who said you and I meeting today was God's plan?" The guard turned to me. "Detective Miller, sir, these two are criminals? This woman has come in here before." The detective nodded. "She's wanted for murder in the EU. Interpol's probably looking for her. She fled Italy to the US somehow." Father Thomas nodded. "You're going back to your old cell, Bella. No one will aid in your escape this time." I kept my grin, simply stating, "Doubtful, Father." The detective's eyebrow rose. "She's too damn calm, Father." "She's insane," Father Thomas reasoned. Detective Miller shook his head. "Nah, I know crazy. This bitch might be wicked, but she ain't wicked crazy." He approached me, his eyes meeting my own. "Tell me right now, what are you planning?" A familiar shiver ran through me, my spirits recoiling from this man. Were his eyes glowing? A cold grip came over me and my grin faltered. I had only felt this chill once before. I was used to it, however, more prepared. "Father Thomas," I said, breaking my eye contact with this detective. "You met yet another angel? Oh my, you must be popular at the Vatican." Father Thomas turned to Detective Miller, his face concerned. Detective Miller grabbed me by the chin, forcing my gaze to fix on him. "Why are you so calm about all of this?" I grinned wide. "Because I have aligned myself to Asmodai. I will succeed where his beautiful demoness slut failed." "Watch your damn mouth when you talk about her," Detective Miller chastised. "Do you have a thing for her?" I chided. "Do you want to screw Asmodai's little whore?" I did not expect the firm slap that crossed my face. Detective Miller's eyes glowed, but with anger, an emotion I was much more accustomed to. "Jason," Father Thomas chided, "control yourself. She's trying to get a rise out of you by speaking of Sarah in such a crude way." "Sarah," I grinned. "Oh, that would make sense. Asmodai has a thing for Sarahs." Father Thomas raised an eyebrow to me, and it was here I realized I had dropped my crazy act. "Oops," I grinned. "You're," Father Thomas suggested, shocked. "The demon's curse drove you mad. How did you recover?" "The demon did not drive me mad, Father," I spat. "Humanity drove me mad. The only thing that demons have done is help me rally against God's plans for me." "You poor lost soul," Father Thomas said in pity. Before we could continue our lovely conversation, the alarms of the prison went off. Detective Miller looked around. "Sanders!" he shouted, running down the hallway. I grinned wide. "Father Thomas, your pretty angel boy is running off. Don't you need to go follow him?" Father Thomas locked eyes with me. "You witch, I can handle. I have dealt with your sort before." The guard looked at Father Thomas. "Father Thomas, I will have to ask you to get to one of our secure locations. The alarms going off means that we might have a situation in the cell block. If you can get someplace safe, that would be appreciated." I wiggled my hands around the handcuffs, the guard's hands no longer on me. "This woman is far more dangerous than you know," Father Thomas tried to explain. I looked to the spirit around my neck, and getting the hint, he slithered down and released me from the cuffs. With a grin and a practiced motion, I grabbed my knife and reached upwards toward the guard whose back was now to me. With a swift action, I slit his throat and turned to rush the other guard. The guard had only just turned to look at me, both of his hands holding down the struggling Amunda. He got one hand free and went to reach for his gun. It's sad, really. A gun is only good if you can get your hand on it. I shoved the knife straight down his neck, burying itself deep in his heart before he could even get the gun out of the holster. I reached over his body, grabbing the gun and pulling it out. I turned to Father Thomas, who was backing away, blood splattering his face as the guard had collapsed on top of him. With a flick of my finger, I clicked the safety off, and in a mock Southern U.S. accent, I taunted, "Well, hee-haw, Father. Looks like I'm a true American. Want a dance partner?" I pointed the pistol at him. Father Thomas ran for cover, and I grinned wide as he did so. As I looked around, I saw no other guards around us, but plenty of commotion happening throughout the building. In the chaos, it seemed no one noticed the guards missing at the check-in. Andy must have something wonderful going on. I leaned down and freed Amunda from his predicament. "On your feet. We need to make sure we have no more interference," I explained. "From who?" Amunda asked. "From that other angel, the more powerful one. This one was strong, but, for some reason, mentioning the demoness, Sarah got him agitated." I smiled. "We need to remember that." Amunda nodded. "So how do you plan to stop any other interference?" "A gatekeeper," I said, dragging the corpse of one guard towards the entrance of the prison. As I got to the entrance, I shoved a seed from the oak tree originally growing out of my spirit's old body and pulled out a bit of Alec's blood. A dollop of the blood, mixed with the blood and the spirit of the poor guard flower boy had tormented, should provide me a proper guardian. "Slighted spirit of anger and hate, I give you a fresh vessel by which to exact your revenge. Surge now into this vacant flesh. Let your anger twist it to your dark desire, and surge, bring forth a terrible retribution upon those who have wounded you." The spirit rushed into the seed, roots growing into the body as the seed glowed red, smoke rising from the once small little nut. The roots dug into the flesh of the guard's corpse, and I watched as the face twisted and shifted, the face of the man I had pulled the spirit from becoming more and more evident. His arms swelled with powerful muscle, veins swelling as the roots dug into his flesh. One arm burst as a massive branch-like appendage grew out of it. The body rose, standing on two legs, which were rapidly becoming more plant-like, the newly minted golem rising higher and higher into the air, much to my extreme satisfaction. He looked down on me, scowling. "I can move. And you'll be able to move all you want after you do your duty and guard this place from anyone entering. Understand?" He nodded. "And after this, I'm free." "As a bird," I explained. The new flesh and wood golem lumbered off towards the entrance, and I watched as he sunk himself into the ground. The new flesh and wound golem lumbered off towards the entrance, and I watched as he sunk himself into the ground. Amunda was staring in disbelief. I turned on my heel, walking around the metal detector. "Come on. We need to meet up with Andy." How did—" Amunda stammered before he followed quickly. "Demonic Pacts," I said as I made my way past the visiting center, which had multiple cubicles broken now, glass lining the floor. The spells that Asmodai had given me were potent to say the least. We made our way towards the sounds of shooting and screaming. Soon gunshots rang out through the hallways. "They aren't going down!" some guards shouted. "Keep shooting. Aim for the head," another commanded. I watched as a guard in full riot gear ran down a hallway towards us. He motioned to us. "Get the hell out of here. It's dangerous. These guys are—" Before he could finish, a massive inmate with a swastika on his forehead had caught up with him from behind. "Oh, God, no!" the guard shouted as the inmate grabbed both his arms, and with a swift motion, ripped them out of his sockets. The guard screamed, falling to his knees and rolling around on the floor. I looked up to the inmate and saw a familiar set of dark and hateful green eyes. The inmate gave me a nod and stepped aside. "Come on, Amunda," I announced. "The violence has only just begun." Amunda grimaced as he followed behind me, stepping away from the guard who continued to bleed out. Walking calmly towards us was Andy, grinning widely, his green eyes shining with dark intent. "Hey, sweetheart. Glad you could make it." "Oh, you," I gushed. "I wouldn't miss this for the world." "Did you find the priest?" he asked. "He ran off, but I've got a good idea where to find him. Is there a chapel here?" Andy nodded. "Somewhere. Not sure where." He smiled wickedly. "We should ask the warden. He'll know." "Lead the way," I said, locking arms with him. Andy whistled a tune as I spotted a pair of hulking inmates tearing a door from its hinges. A desperate voice shouted from inside the doorway. "They have plans. Oh, damn, he wasn't crazy." A man's voice had trailed off as Andy and I entered the room. In a well-tailored suit, though with soiled pants, was a man I assumed was the warden. He was on the phone, likely calling the authorities. "Oh, God! Get the hell away from me, Andy! Stay back!" The man glanced to me, his graying eyes going wide. What the hell is she doing here with you?" I smiled, letting go of Andy as he approached the warden. And I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts, and I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed with him. Andy said as he grabbed the warden's head on either side and drove his thumbs into the warden's eye sockets. The warden screamed in pain, thrashing futilely against Andy's inhuman strength. Blood gushed from the warden's eyes. His face contorted in pain as his hand reached for Andy's wrists. Despite his efforts, the warden was powerless against Andy's fingers, digging deeper into his skull. The warden finally went limp against Andy's mutilation. "Oh, and Andy will make a fine vessel for you, Lord of Hate. I wondered if Asmodee's power was enough to restore my uterus, if I could bear his child, if, like the first woman, Lilith, I would become a demon mother by carrying the child of a fallen." Andy dropped the warden's body and moved to the phone. I snuck behind him, grinning and whispering a little chant to my spirits. Slip through the cordon line. Slip through cordon line, and with the ease of current, pass forth and end the life of the one who hears the words of this man. One of my little rabbit spirits rushed through the phone line. Andy grinned. "Hello?" He spoke into the phone, keeping the line open. "I'd like to know, is this line recorded?" I turned to Amunda, watching as another pair of hulking inmates walked down the hallway. I grinned, seeing more guards lining up with their riot shields at the ready. "My master will come soon. His star is the wane, and it will be as he said. We shall again have free range over mankind, so as that they shall revere us as if we were gods. He will rule with hate and not love, and there are no more angels who can cast them out, for man has lost faith. But they have not lost faith in man. They have always believed in man's sin. The day of reckoning is upon you, but there's no need to repent, because God can no longer hear your prayers," Andy said, grinning. Gunshots rang out down the hallway. The inmates charged, the bullets striking them, some even taking a shot to the skull, but still their bodies moved mindlessly towards the guards. Screaming ensued as the inmates brutalized the guards. I moved to the phone, smiling as I could sense my spirit nearing the dispatcher. "Hello?" "Oh," the voice on the other end echoed. My spirit must have arrived, ready to tie this loose end up. God help us. I could hear the snapping noise of electricity and a body clattering to the floor as the line went dead. Good boy. I smiled as I got to my feet. Andy turned to me. Sorry we didn't get to find out where the chapel is. Amunda had remained silent this whole time, but pointed down the hallway, breaking his trance at long last. It's down that way. There's a sign. Andy clapped his hands together happily. Thank the Lord there's a sign, he mocked. I walked down the hallway, grinning widely. I will enjoy this. I heard praying as I neared the chapel entrance. A grin came over my face as I walked to the entrance of the chapel. There, knelt before an altar, was Father Thomas, in a small little prison chapel. My, not the same as the St. Peter's Basilica, now is it? I taunted as I walked in. Father Thomas got to his feet, glaring at me. Your magic will not work inside of this hallowed ground. I have seen to it. This is a sanctuary. I mockingly clutched my hands to my chest. Oh no, you have bested me, O servant of God, child of the Father. Father Thomas glared at me. You are truly wicked, Bella. And I'm not even green, I smiled, drawing my knife. So, are you the wizard? Or the Tin Man in this story, Father? Father Thomas moved to the right, keeping his distance, making sure a pew was between me and him. Mark my words, God's plan does not involve your or your master's success. I gritted my teeth and a familiar heat filled my bones. The brand on my shoulder ached for a moment, like hot water crashing upon my skin, but soon a shiver came over me. A more intense flame surged inside of me, and though Father Thomas was on the other side of the pew, I grabbed my end and shoved it forward. I make my own plan, I shouted. To my shock, the pew jolted forward and crashed into Father Thomas. I sent Father Thomas flying backward, and I could hear a rib snap as he tumbled to the ground. As he fell, something tumbled from his hand. No, Father Thomas gasped. Oh dear. I approached Father Thomas, who now coughed up some blood. I gave a mocking wince. Oh, that's bad, Father. Not a good sign. Blood is supposed to stay inside of you. I should know. I drew my knife. I've been working with it for some time now. Back the hell up, Detective Miller's voice called out. I turned to see him, sans trench coat, and a few marks on him. He spread a pair of huge white feathery wings behind him as he approached. He was brandishing a massive pistol. It pulsed with a powerful holy energy. As he stepped into the chapel, it surged in power. Listening to him, I backed away, holding my hands up. Well, aren't those some pretty wings there? Stay the hell back, Detective Miller said, as he rushed to Father Thomas's aid. Father, you okay? Decidedly not, Father Thomas coughed, his breath shortening. He seemed to reach for something under the pew, though it was hard to tell what. Andy walked in behind us, his blood-covered inmate minions following. Ah, perfect. Trapped like the true rat you are, Miller. Detective Miller's eyes narrowed on Andy. If it weren't for the father, I'd be taking you morons on head-to-head, but that will have to wait. He placed his hand on the wall. Where are you going to go, Miller? You've got no place to run, Andy taunted. I grinned. I am curious where you think you will escape to. I pointed to the stained glass window above the altar. It was a false window, with fake lightning behind it. The only light coming from it was from false backlighting. That's not a real window, you know. You're cornered, Angel. Why not call upon your Enoch friend? Maybe he will help you. Detective Miller grinned. Oh, trust me, I will. To my shock, a large pair of wooden doors appeared on the wall. They opened to a grand marble foyer with a light so bright it blinded me. I heard some shouts of pain from the inmates and Andy growling in anger as Detective Miller shouted loud, Go back to hell, you animals! And in an instant, the light vanished. The sounds of doors slamming shut resonated through the chapel. I rubbed my eyes, looking around the room to see Detective Miller and Father Thomas both gone. Where is he? Andy chuckled. Who cares? He ran off with his tail between his legs. Andy now looked me up and down. Now he can get to work